Executives oftentimes come to very quick conclusions when they first look at the profitability model. Sometimes the conclusions stand the test of further analysis, sometimes they don't. The profitability model, when you give it to a senior executive, it's like turning on a light switch. It's a room that may have been partially darkened before that suddenly is bathed in light, and you can see all the nooks and crannies of the business. Customers who are performing well, products that aren't performing well, channels that are very successful and channels that aren't successful. Almost invariably, whenever we show a model to a team of executives for the first time, immediately they are drawn to the worst performing customer and say, who's that? Who's responsible for that customer? And they want to know the name of that customer. And for us, that's just a representative example of what executives are enabled, what they're enabled with this new information, is to ask questions about pieces of the business they didn't have the information to ask before, because there's a natural desire to do something about that underperforming area of the business. At the start of an assessment, we do focus interviews, and we hear, well, who are your best customers, and why are these customers so important to you? And oftentimes, during that process, strategic customers will be identified. And the whole organization knows about these customers, and they think of them in very high regard. The business bends over backwards to support them. Whatever these customers ask is produced for them. Oftentimes, unfortunately, when you build the profitability models, you find that these very important and highly regarded customers, strategic ones, aren't profitable. In fact, oftentimes they're the worst performing customers from a profit standpoint, because the organization is bending over backwards to meet their needs, because they get the best discounts, because they've been with the company the longest. Over time, we just do more and more for them, and when we end up building the models that reconcile the financial statements, we find that the cost of serving these customers is often greater than the value that they bring. A few years ago, when we reviewed a profitability model with one of our clients, the senior executive there, the first thing he noticed was that every time they did a transaction or they used a certain one of their channels to go to market, it was loss-making. Not 50% of the time, not 75% of the time, but every single time they sold through a certain channel, it was a loss-making transaction. It really opened his eyes into both the power of profitability modeling and also the opportunities for improving his business. Because he could go to that same end customer using a different channel. In many cases, when they would, it would in fact be profitable. So immediately upon seeing that, the executive made an executive decision, said, we will no longer use this type of channel. Now clearly that in itself is not a path to step change performance improvement. However, it did, for that particular executive, make the case of why this way of looking at the business is superior than the old way.